Doctors stretch to the limit. Patients gasping for air keep arriving, but there aren't enough beds. Most of the really sick here in Bergamo are elderly, but medics warn young people they too are vulnerable.
50% of our patients in the ICU, which are the most severe patients, 50% of our patients are over 65 years old, but that means that the other 50% is younger than 65, and we have patients 20 years old, 30 years old, quite a few.
Italy is racing to get temporary hospitals up and running. This one has been opened by a US charity in the northern city of Cremona.
We came here because our fellow brothers and sisters, our Italian brothers and sisters, are hurting.
The horrifying situation in the north is now being replicated in the south. Here in Naples, the streets are empty, but the hospitals are starting to fill up.
The figures basically reflect that of Lombardy 2 weeks ago.
Residents scrub all surfaces they think might be susceptible to contamination. But no matter how much they clean, nothing can remove the fear of infection.
Correspondent Seema Gupta joins us from Rome. Seema, the death toll in Italy saw this unprecedented leap on Friday. Do experts understand why?
Well, Rebecca, I mean, there are hypotheses, and the first one, the one that's being repeated often by the officials, is simply because Italy has a significant number of elderly. It's the second oldest population in the world. A quarter of the population is over the age of 65. And so if you are older, if you have underlying health conditions such as diabetes or hypertension or heart disease, you succumb more easily to this infection, unfortunately. Basically, it targets the more fragile members of society, and that's why we're seeing these high numbers. Second possible reason is the fact that the healthcare system is so under strain right now. I mean, there were cuts to the system in the past, and on top of that, of course, we've seen doctors, some 8% of doctors that are included in the list of those infected. And the third possible reason is that maybe this lockdown, in particular Lombardy, could have been done earlier. But for now, though, people are just focusing on treating those who need the help.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the elderly population, but as we heard in the piece, half of the patients are younger than 65. Are young people taking precautions seriously?
Well, that's the whole point. I mean, what the authorities are saying is that you can be young, you can have the infection, and it will not present any symptoms. In fact, you may just have a mild cold, if anything, or a few aches and pains because you're younger. That said, though, again, it comes back to the point, if you are if you have some fragile issues, basically, if you have underlying health conditions, even though you're younger, it could have a dramatic impact. So that's why you're also seeing some younger patients in the intensive care units. And that's why the authorities are stressing that everyone has to do their part in order to limit the spread. So even if you're younger, you need to help such that the older members of society don't get the infection.
Indeed. What further measures are being taken in Italy to curb the spread?
Well, what we do know now is that the next week or so is a crucial one. And that's because Italy is nowhere near its peak in terms of the number of infections. And therefore, the authorities have clamped down even further. Right now, no public parks are open. They're encouraging you to conduct any sporting activity, any exercise at home or close to home. Food stores close to train stations will all be shut, and no one is allowed to move to their second homes, if you like. Each region is also putting in place specific measures. Here in Rome, for example, there will be more controls on the street as well as roadblocks to ensure that people are not moving about without any valid reason. Up north in the Lombardy region, the president of the region asked for military on the streets. He got 114 personnel in the city of Milan. He says that's not enough. He needs more measures put in place to prevent people from going outside. And in Veneto, they're saying you can't even walk your dog beyond 200 meters from your residence. So really all these measures to ensure that people stay at home, because as I mentioned, this next week or so is crucial as we hope Italy heads towards its peak. It all depends on the projections and the trends that the scientists are looking at. The head of the Civil Protection Services say it could be anything between next week or the week after.
Seema Gupta reporting for us from Rome. Thank you.